You are 22 years old, and your job today, like every day, is to watch a bird breathe. Nobody back home would believe this is a job. There's no name for it in any careers pamphlet, no badge, no rank that quite captures what you actually do down here. On paper, you're attached to a tunneling company, digging war beneath the war, a second front nobody sees, dug 30, 60, 90 feet under no man's land, where men claw toward the enemy's own tunnels in silence so complete that a dropped tool can end an entire operation. But your real job, the one that actually determines who goes home tonight, has nothing to do with the shovel. It's the small wooden cage hanging from your hand. Inside it, a canary. Bright yellow, impossibly small, the only spot of color in a world that is otherwise entirely gray. Gray mud, gray timber, gray men. Here's what almost nobody outside this tunnel understands. The deadliest thing down here isn't the enemy. It's carbon monoxide, a gas thrown off by explosives, by shell blasts, by the simple act of digging through ground that's already been torn apart by war. It has no smell, no color, no warning. A man can be breathing it in for minutes, feeling only a little tired, a little foggy, before he's unconscious on the tunnel floor with no memory of falling. By the time a human notices something is wrong, it's often already too late to walk out under his own power, which is exactly why you're carrying a bird instead of a gauge. Canaries have a metabolism that runs far hotter than a human's, and lungs built for open sky, not sealed tunnels. That means the same air that a man might tolerate for another 10, 15 minutes will drop a canary almost instantly. The bird isn't the mascot, it's a living instrument, more sensitive than anything available to you in 1916, tuned by evolution itself to fail first, so that you don't have to. You didn't get handed this cage by accident. The men chosen for rescue and gas work down here weren't picked for size or strength the way you might expect. They were picked for something harder to train, staying level-headed when everyone around them is not. Command wanted men who had already spent underground in civilian life, men who understood tunnels the way a sailor understands water, not as a hostile place, just a place with rules, rules that kill you the moment you stop respecting them. Nerve mattered more than muscle. A strong man who panics at the first sign of trouble is a liability with a shovel. A calm man who can watch a bird sway and make the right call in 4 seconds without his voice cracking, without his hands shaking hard enough to drop the cage, that man keeps a gallery of people alive. So they trained you, not just on the birds, but on the waiting, on sitting with the boredom of watching nothing happen for hours, because the moment something does happen, the version of you that panics is useless, and the version of you that stayed bored and alert the whole time is the only version anyone down here can afford. Your morning starts the same way it always does. You check the cage before anyone else is properly awake. You look at the perch grip. Canaries here have had the very tips of their claws trimmed, not out of cruelty, but so they physically cannot lock onto the perch too tightly. It sounds strange until you understand why. A bird overcome by gas needs to fall. If its grip is too strong, it might slump against the perch and you'd read it as resting. A weakened grip means the moment the gas reaches it, it drops. A visible, unmistakable signal, not a subtle one you might miss in poor light with tired eyes. You log its behavior. You log its breathing rate. You count how many times it opens its beak in a minute, because open-mouth panting is one of the earliest tells, well before the collapse. This isn't guesswork you invented. The whole practice was built out of the work of physiologists, studying exactly how gas moves through a small body versus a large one, refining what to watch for down to specific, repeatable signs. Your job is to have all of it memorized so well that you don't have to think, because when it actually happens, thinking is the one thing you won't have time for. Today, 3 hours into the shift, deep in a gallery barely wide enough for 2 men to pass shoulder to shoulder, it happens. The bird goes quiet mid-song. Not stop singing to rest. Canaries do that. This is different, and you know it's different in your chest before your mind has even finished the sentence. Its feathers puff out. Its beak opens. It sways once on the perch and doesn't correct itself the way a healthy bird corrects itself 100 times a day without thinking. Behind you, 2 men are already watching. Not the bird. You. Because in the next 4 seconds, everything that happens to everyone in this gallery depends on the decision you make, and there is no one to make it for you. Call it gas, and you are wrong, and the whole crew evacuates a working gallery for nothing, loses hours of digging on a schedule that's already brutal, and every man down here starts quietly wondering if the last person they trust their life to is a nervous wreck who panics at a sick bird. Call it just illness, and you are wrong the other way. And men stay in an atmosphere that is right now stealing consciousness from their bodies without a single one of them feeling it happen. There's no coin flip here. There's no version of wait and see. Waiting is the wrong answer, because by the time the second bird goes down too, by the time a man himself starts stumbling, the decision has already been made for you by the gas, and it's already too late for at least one person in this tunnel. You watch the sway. You watch the beak. You watch, this is the detail that actually separates a good sentry from a lucky one, how it happened. Not just that it happened. A bird succumbing to gas doesn't gradually get quieter over an hour, the way a genuinely sick bird might. It goes from apparently fine to visibly distressed in a window of a minute or two, sometimes less. Illness has a slower arc. Gas has almost no arc at all. It's less like reading a book and more like recognizing the difference between a candle going out because it burned down and a candle going out because someone just walked past it. You call it gas. The word moves down the gallery faster than you could physically run it. Men drop tools mid-swing. The line of retreat that's been drilled into everyone since the day they arrived, not further than a couple hundred yards from a rescue point, that's not an accident, that's a number chosen specifically so nobody down here is ever more than a short scramble from help, starts moving. You're the last one out because the cage is still in your hand, and leaving it behind means losing your only working instrument the next time this happens, which it will. Above ground, in daylight that feels almost obscene after that gallery, the count comes back. Nobody down. No one even reports feeling foggy. On paper, nothing happened today. No casualty report gets filed, no name gets added to anything. And that's precisely the strange, invisible nature of a job like yours. Success doesn't look like a rescue. It doesn't look like heroism, the kind that gets written up, that gets a medal pinned to a chest at some ceremony after the war. Success looks like an ordinary afternoon, a quiet return to work 40 minutes later once the air's been tested and cleared. Nothing happened because you made sure nothing happened, and there's no way to prove ever exactly how many men would have gone down in that gallery if you'd read that bird sway as 30 seconds later than you should have. That's the part of this job nobody prepares you for, not the danger. You signed up for danger. Everyone down here did. It's the invisibility of getting it right. A man who dies from a mistake becomes a name, a story, a lesson passed down. A man who lives because someone else made the right call at the right second becomes nothing, just a man who went home for dinner that night, never knowing how close it actually was. Some of these birds get so reliable, so consistently good at surviving one exposure without going down, that the men start treating them less like equipment and more like something closer to a comrade. There are records of birds gassed once, twice, 3 times, pulled through each time and finally retired from the working galleries altogether, sent back to sit somewhere safer, their only remaining job to sing for whoever stationed there. Not because they'd stopped being useful, because someone, somewhere along the chain of command, in a war not otherwise known for its sentiment, decided a bird that had done this much didn't deserve to keep rolling the dice. You don't get that kind of ceremony. You get another cage, another bird, another morning where you check its grip, log its breathing, and wait to see if today is the day the singing stops for the wrong reason. You will do this shift after shift for months in a war that will eventually end with a signature on paper somewhere far from this tunnel, and no history book will remember your name specifically because the whole point of doing this job well is that nothing memorable is supposed to happen. What you don't know, standing in that gallery, is how long this method outlives the war itself. Long after the armistice, long after these tunnels are abandoned and the ground above them heals over, canaries will keep riding down into mine shafts and cages built almost exactly like yours, through the 20s, 30s, straight through most of the century, in coal pits that have nothing to do with any war. It will take the invention of reliable electronic sensors, decades away, before anyone trusts a machine over a bird enough to leave the birds at home for good. Some miners, when that day finally comes, will actually be reluctant to give it up, not out of nostalgia, but because a bird that goes quiet is something you can see and understand in an instant, in a way that a blinking light on a box never quite earns the same trust. for the better part of 100 years, in wars and in peacetime both, the answer to, is the air safe to breathe, comes down to the same, small, ordinary miracle, whether a yellow bird in a cage is still singing. But somewhere in the quiet after all of it, hundreds of men who never knew exactly how close they came will simply go home. Not because of a general, not because of a strategy drawn up in a room they never saw, because of a bright yellow bird, a pair of trimmed claws, and a man who had 4 seconds to read a sway correctly and did. Subscribe. See you in the next one.